Well, hello everyone, and welcome to number 34. My goodness, 34 episodes. That's just kind of wow. So, in honor of this 34th episode, we are going to be talking about the freedom to choose. We weren't allowed to have freedom just in case I did my impersonation of William Wallace, the Mel Gibson one, not the other one. But there you go. Was there another one? Oh, yeah. So, freedom to choose. It's an interesting concept because we're all, me particularly, on about freedom, about having freedom, being free to do something, to be something, to have something, to say something. However, it's when we choose to do it, how we choose to do it, and what those choices bring as consequences that sometimes makes life a little bit interesting. So, with that in mind, let's start going round the room and introducing everybody, because we've got a full house tonight. Yay! So, Angela.
I'm more just thinking, how am I going to do the front cover for the episode with all these extra faces? I'm Angela, a kinesiologist and coach, and I work with people who are suffering from overwhelm and stress to help them to relieve the stress, understand what's triggering it, to then hopefully deal with it better in the future, and to live the life that they want to live.
Okay, so I'm just going to go on the other side of me now. Maxine?
Hi, I'm Maxine, and I do many therapies, and the main aim is to bring individuals back into balance so that they can just live their life as they choose to live their life.
Okay, let's go middle for diddle. Trudi!
Hi everyone, my name's Trudi. I'm based in Wiltshire and I offer various holistic therapies such as Reiki and Reiki drumming, along with retreats using Mother Nature and all the holistic therapies mixed together.
Thank you. Mary?
Well, I'm Mary Corbett and I also am a coach, but I'm based in East Cork in Ireland. And what I do is I work with people who get promoted or change jobs and find themselves not quite landing on their feet and being wonderful at what they do. So I help them find the flow and stay resilient. That's what I do.
Thank you. Janice?
I'm Tanys Coughlan, and I am from Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, and I help people to find their spiritual path, find balance in their life, and forgiveness through Reiki, energy healing. I'm a Celtic shamanic high priestess as well, so we put in some ceremonial stuff in there and do a bunch of stuff.
And last but not least, the last man standing, Tony!
Thank you, Leslie. Yeah, my name's Tony Gordon, and I'm a mindset coach and hypnotherapist. I work with business owners, usually second year above in business, who start to get themselves stuck, want to scale the business, but don't really know how to do it or what next move should be. So I just help them to bring new resources in to help them to move on with their lives. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm Leslie Marsh, and I'm an holistic coach and consultant. Do many, many therapies as well. But my favourite thing to do is just have some fun and get things confused. I have to say that because it usually ends up that way anyway.
And you're very good at it.
I am very good at it, so I might as well play to my strengths. I am free to choose to be a little bit of a guddler. We used to do that a lot. We used to go in for a guddle, and then by the time we'd come out, we'd mix things up so much that the animal that we were guddling inside would come out and feel better.
That's an entirely new word to me. Entirely new word.
Oh, it's a very technical word, Mary. Very, very technical word. Basically means just getting your hands in there and going, ooh, what's going on there? So, kind of what we do with people when they're having problems and they come to us because they're in a guddle and they need to be deguddled. So, freedom had to do it.
You just promised us you weren't going to.
I didn't make any promises.
But she had the freedom to change her mind anyway.
Exactamundo.
Points.
I had the freedom to choose.
Mhm.
Well done, Mary. Thank you. Now, extra brownie points for you. Now, what is it about freedom that a lot of the time we feel we don't have it? And when we feel we don't have it, even although it's an unconscious feeling of being maybe stuck and unable to get through, why is it that we feel that way? When actually all we have to do is think, I choose to do something differently. Tanys.
Mhm. Well, I think if you look at the energy of it, right, we get energy stuck in our system. And when the energy is not flowing, it does have a heaviness to it. So the heaviness tends to make us feel like we don't have a choice, especially depending on the layer of energy that it's sitting in, right? So we have, our physical layer, we have our mental emotional layer. And so if we're stuck in the mental emotional layer, it definitely feels heavy and it can feel constricting. And I think that constriction tends to make us feel like we don't have choices. And, sometimes we give into what we should be doing as opposed to what we want to do. And when that happens, we tend to feel like we are constricted or we don't have the freedom to make those choices, because a lot of our society, we've spent a lot of time trying to keep everybody else happy. And in doing that, we've sort of put ourselves in a box. So it's about opening that box and allowing ourselves to see other options.
Oh, that reminds me of Pandora.
Yeah.
Angela.
I think it's an interesting one because sometimes the thought of freedom can be really scary. So if you've always lived your life in a certain way and you've always done things in a certain way, if someone then says to you, but you're free to choose, the concept that you can, what's those old books that you can choose your adventure, the concept that you can pick what your life's going to be can be terrifying, because change is one of those things that is great in some respects, but in other respects is really scary because you don't know what's coming next. So that freedom to choose, it's like giving me a blank sheet of paper and saying, go for it. But what? I need a framework. I need something to start from. And there's a lot of people out there that the minute you say you're free to choose what you want to do, no, that's not me.
Do you think, Mary, could this be the reason why a lot of people go back into spaces and places that are less than good for them?
Absolutely, because I think that I have a great sense of, there's a phrase in it, oh, but sure, I have to do it. I have to. As if they have no choice and they're not making the decision. And I've done some lovely work with people saying, well, even just changing that mindset and saying, but I'm actually, if you consciously say, but I'm choosing to do it anyway, it changes the stress level. But I think that drifting is that those societal norms, those expectations of others can have a huge impact on people, and saying that they don't actually have a belief system that they have choice. And I think that's, I find that with the people, say, who go work and go for promotion because it's expected for them. It's not necessarily that it's a job they want or a role they want, but societal norms are telling them, I must go for the promotion, even though it mightn't be what actually suits them at all. It might be completely the wrong choice. But that idea that they could choose to stay put and actually be really happy, it's always coming in from the outside. So I think this idea of choice is very much externally driven, and that there's a lot of work in giving people space to really say, actually I can make a change. I can do it slightly different. I have a choice here. And sometimes it's really even showing them, make a tiny little choice, like I'll have two biscuits instead of one, or I'll only have one biscuit, and making it a conscious choice. That can be a big decision, because that's the first time that, oh, actually I get to decide. That the step to actually make a conscious decision, and that there's a choice in it, is novel to them. And I think that there's a huge amount of work and a huge amount of people stuck in I have to, or other people's expectations of what's expected of them.
Yeah. We were talking about this the other day, so I'm going to go to Tony about this. What do you think about this as far as open mind and closed mindsets are concerned?
Yeah, I think a lot of people with the closed mindset is exactly what Mary's talking about. They don't always think they've got a choice because they've been indoctrinated to believe since they were younger that that's as far as they can go. Their limitations, although we say the only limitations you have are the ones you give yourself, they've been given them by external forces. They've been given them maybe by their parents, by school teachers when they were younger, told, well, you can't do this or you're only good at that. So they don't think their mind can expand enough to be able to take new learning on, to push them off. So when they get a block, people say sometimes it was because the overwhelm caused them to not be able to do something. But actually, it's the overwhelm of freedom can sometimes cause that with people because they have too much choice and they don't know how to drill that choice down. So all these things are hitting them. And I love the way Mary put it as it is. It's all the external factors. And she said, like, I believe a lot is they need to look inside before they can start looking outside. So if you look inside, you get that part right and you get the balance right. A bit like Tanys was saying about your energy. If you balance your own energy and your own beliefs in yourself, then that materializes and manifests in a way that your mind can then cope and say, actually, all right, I can't do that yet, but what can I do then? I can do it later. And I keep saying to people, that 3 little word changes everything around when it comes to the choice. I might not have that choice yet, but I will once I learn how to do that. And I don't have that choice yet until I speak to that person so they understand why I want to do it a certain way. Because sometimes the overwhelm with choice is, and I think what Mary was saying about because of the influence of other people, but sometimes it's because we don't want to hurt other people that we restrict our own choices because we think that this person would like us doing that or that person would like to choose here. And we don't know which one would get impacted the most if we choose what suits us. And that's how we're going to get the balance right. If we get that right, other people will respect it. They will understand better that you understand yourself enough to make those choices. And if you do that, the overwhelm automatically decreases without you even trying to do it.
Kind of guilt trip of the selfish part, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we call that
Totally.
self-care. Trudy, what do you think?
Forgotten what the original question was now. I've been so engrossed in listening.
Just pick something that Tony said and run with it.
Yeah, no, I just think that if you give everybody a choice, then just say that, for example, if there's a group of people and you're giving them a choice, then they tend to procrastinate or want to ponder and mull it over too much rather than just going, yeah, actually, I'd really like to do this, or this. And I think leading on from what you guys have all said, that we're often too conditioned and we forget what freedom of choice feels like because we've had the conditioning in childhood or schooling or whatever, and people have forgotten that it's okay to be making a decision of their own and being free. Sorry, Mary.
Because I remember this so clearly when my kids were small, of actually the one phrase I hate is say, well, would you like more carrots or more broccoli on your dinner? Or would you like more of this? I don't mind. I banned the expression I don't mind from the dinner table. Make a choice, make a decision to choose. And I think there's a huge amount of how that this thing about ingraining this, I have to accommodate, I have to be nice to people, I have to make sure their needs come first. Getting kids to be very clear. Now, it did come back to haunt me at times. It did come out, there was a consequence for me in terms of making them eat their vegetables for various stages. But, teaching what we teach our kids when they're little, that really basic, simple thing about making a choice about food, about making a choice about the toys, about making a choice about which sports they continued on each year, which ones they dropped, things they took on. There's a huge amount of, well, mommy knows best or daddy knows best, and we don't give them we don't teach them how to make a choice. And I think it comes back to haunt us as they mature into adulthood because they've never learned the skill set.
And when they're learning the skill set, there's also a part of it is you can make a choice, but you can change your mind.
Exactly.
If you make a choice and it doesn't go the way you expect it to, it's not the end of the world. And just because you've made that choice doesn't mean tomorrow you can't decide, no, I don't want that, or I want more of it, or I want less.
Yeah.
It's a constantly moving feast. And I think a lot of the times people are scared to choose the wrong choice. What if I say, yes, I want more carrots, and then I can't finish them? And then I'm going to be in trouble because I've not finished my plate.
Finish back.
There's a whole pile of other stuff that's going on as well.
Yeah.
And it's working out what is that voice in your head saying, if there is a voice in your head saying anything. Is it a fear of too many choices, blank sheet of paper, I'm going to make the wrong choice? Or is it a case of, do you know what, I'm just going to pick something and go with it and see what happens?
But I think
And-
that comes in, there was always that saying growing up, you know, you make your bed, you lie on it. So, it comes back to that choice. If you make a choice, you make the wrong choice. It was very much ingrained that, well, you live with that. There's no other option. And it is very much about, and I would totally agree with Mary, is that it should start at childhood. I mean, if you even think with childhood, how many parents, I went or I never did dancing or this or that, or your father's a surgeon, so that's what we're going to start to direct you in. I mean, when they're children, I mean, how many children do actually get the choice? Even when it comes down to education, everybody's lumped in together, and it's just, you do this, this is what you're expected to do. And it even comes down to think about when a baby's born, that they've got all these set parameters. They're supposed to grow to a certain height. They're supposed to weigh a certain, they're supposed to speak at a certain age. There just seems to be all these parameters for children. And obviously that then grows as they grow, and then they end up where making a choice, it comes back to that whatever, because they've never had that choice or been taught to choose.
Personally, if somebody said to me, and it has been done to me too, if you think, oh, I don't mind, then you get both. More broccoli, more carrots, and you have to eat them.
Sometimes you don't care. I've got a lot of times when I say, I don't care if I get carrots or broccoli. Give me both, give me neither. I don't actually care. But that's a choice too.
Yep. It is a choice too, and recognizing that that's a choice too. I mean, I think one of the phrases, I think it was one of the, I once read, those Guides for Dummies books series, and there was one on NLP, but there was a great phrase in it that I read and said, nobody sets out to make a bad decision.
Yeah,
That's
it's true.
And it's true.
So many people, though, don't choose to actually look at what is available before they make the decision. It's a very knee-jerk reaction, and we've suffered a lot through that in the last few years. But at the same time, it's a case of, we have this ancestral idea that's come down the line of what your place is, what you're supposed to be, how you're supposed to be, who you're supposed to marry, what that you are supposed to marry, that you're supposed to be doing, and it's not actually your idea. It's never been their idea, and it probably wasn't way back anybody's idea. But at one point, somebody started to say, I'm the boss and I decide what you do. Now, it may well have been in those days that it was to do with your survival. These days, not so much, because we don't want to just survive now. We kind of really want to thrive, don't we?
Yeah.
We can only thrive if we take our choices. So I'm going to be a little bit cheeky here. Unusual, I know, but I'm going to be a little bit cheeky here. And I'm going to say to everybody, okay, can you think of one choice that you made that actually changed something in a way that you didn't understand it was going to happen, for either good or bad, or may?
Before I maybe start thinking that, I was more thinking about your comment about knee-jerk reactions and people just making split-second decisions. Those are sometimes the best decisions to make. I made a snap-second decision that someone in the office I was working at says, I've got a spare ticket to go on a skiing holiday. Do you want to come? Yeah, go on then. I'd said 2 sentences to this person before, and then all of a sudden we're going on holiday together. It was great. We fell out halfway through the holiday, but that's beside the point. I really enjoyed myself. But that was just a snap-second decision of, do you know what? I'm going to go and do it.
But then a decision is also a choice.
Exactly.
Yeah, but sometimes a choice to people can feel like an ultimatum. Sometimes because when they're younger, they're told that you can have this or you can have that. Yes or no, what do you want? We tell them all the time there's an alternative. You have this thing or that thing. What we never say to them is, can you think of another way? Or what other way would you like to do it? For example, you can have carrots or broccoli. That's an ultimatum. Somebody's to child because they think, I can only have one or the other. Which one do I have to have? What if the answer is neither? I would like none of them tonight. I've had enough. But we don't seem to have that. And they start to become that if we're not careful. That's where you get the fixed mindset from, because they get that limitation that either I can do it or I can't. But they don't have an alternative to say, all right, step back for a second, look at the picture and say, can I find a way around that? Can I have a think away, or who could help me to get past this? So we also have to be careful when you're dealing, exactly what Maxine said, we're dealing with children, is we don't give them choices that look like an ultimatum. The choice has to be free. For the word free means it should be their decision what they'd like to do. But if we only put it in a certain way, a certain parameter, then obviously that's all they can choose from. And that's how their mind starts to work as they grow up.
And the thing is that the children actually are people pleasers. They look to you to see your face, to see which face, which decision that they make, which choice that they make is going to be the optimum one for their softly, nicely continuing the day.
That's it.
And keeping you happy.
Yeah. So they feel as though they have to do it. And that's not what you want to see happen. We want them to be able to think for themselves, but we limit that happening. The box situation, like Tanys mentioned earlier, that's the box.
But then we get the teenagers.
Choose.
We hit 13 and then it
that's
starts
a totally
to get
different thing, though. Teenagers,
yeah,
totally different.
Teenagers are wonderful. I won't allow anyone
them,
say anything bad about teenagers. They are fabulous human beings.
You say teenagers. My niece has turned 10, and I think she's hit teenagers already.
Right. Well, that wouldn't surprise me at all. Everything's happening a little bit earlier these days.
I think again, the other thing that comes to mind is who's deciding what's right and what's wrong in your decisions.
Yeah.
Because if it's something that I make a decision about for me, could be right for me and not for somebody else. Does that make it wrong because it's not for somebody else? So that's the other thing that sort of factors into all of this. The shoulds that people put on us is kind of what we were talking about, the expectations. But if you're putting an expectation on somebody else that is what's right for me, but that's not right for them, then does that make it a bad decision or a right decision? Or, so I think that we have to discuss sort of the how do you make a decision for yourself in that way without thinking about what everybody else is saying to you. So do you go inside? For me, I always advise my clients to go inside, go into the heart. Don't try and block out all of those shoulds, because we should ourselves to death, right? Whether it's to others or us. That word should is a dangerous expectation word. So
should to shroud.
And taking on from that as well, it might be right for us today, but it might not be right for us tomorrow, and it might be right for somebody else tomorrow when it was not right for them today. And it's about the fact that a choice is a constantly moving feast.
Yeah.
Every day we wake up. So I've chosen today to put a jumper on, and it might be really, really hot outside, so it was a really silly choice. So I choose to take it off. But tomorrow I've gone out without the jumper, and I'm now regretting it. There's loads of stuff that things change, and okay, I'm using the weather as an example, but there's so many other moving feasts out there that just because it's right today doesn't mean it's going to be right tomorrow.
That's why I like.
And which should are we still using for that one then?
Right? I like Castaneda for this, with his idea of the path with the heart and choosing a path with heart. And then he goes on to say, however, if you find when you're on that path, it has no heart, there is no shame in coming off of that path and taking another one. And I think that word is really up there, shame. Yeah. Because there's a lot of people who see people making decisions and they perhaps don't say anything, So which is they're free to do. They're free to just, I'm not saying anything, and let them go and do what they want. However, when it seems that their decision has come up against them and has made life a little bit harder for them, then they come in with the shaming. Well, you should have known about that, and that's what you deserve, and but actually they're shaming themselves.
Mhm.
Because this is a projection, is it not?
It
And
is.
what's happening inside them. They're looking at someone going, well, that's what would have happened to me if I'd tried it, and I know how I would feel, so I'm just going to tell you how you feel.
Mhm.
And someone telling me how they feel and how I should feel, shoulds again, is
Yep.
none of my business.
No.
None of my business what somebody else thinks of me. Well, all that matters is what I think of me, and have I made a decision that I can live with? Have I made a choice that I want to continue to live with, or am I going to change my mind?
Do we
Well,
think that the younger generations these days feel free to actually be that way?
Yes and no. Now this is biased by the fact that my youngest daughter is in her 3rd year in college, so she'll be graduating next year. My son graduated 3 years ago, so they're at that sort of early start in their career. And what I noticed, and what is really prevalent, is that well-intentioned lecturers, career guidance people, career coaches are there saying, well, here's a pathway, here's a strategy, and it's a career path for 20 years, when reality tells us it's not. And I must
anymore.
say that, yeah, but there's a whole bunch of the counselors, the career guidance people, and the lecturers are go down that route. There's, take that option, there's jobs there. That's where the money is. Which is fine. If they're motivated by money and that's what they want, that's fine. But if they're not motivated by money, and I find it's an interesting when you challenge the thinking and say, well, realistically, I reckon you'll change your mind what you're doing within 10 years. So pick something that's nice for you for now. And my daughter particularly looks at me and said, you mean I can pick anything I like? I said, yeah, as long as you kind of looks like it's kind of interesting. The money will take, and I just keep telling her, the money will take care of itself. Do something that you find interesting, that brings you joy. And she's there going, oh, oh, oh. And I said,
what you've done there is given her the freedom to choose.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
she knows that, like I have a nephew and his mother wants him to have a nice steady job. And they're going, he hasn't got the personality for a steady job. He needs multiple streams of income because he's going to be bored out of his tree in a steady job. But her mindset, like this, is stuck on. Now she's gradually moving, but it's a very slow process. But it's interesting that this choice thing is, I think there's that very strong interplay between an older generation of the must have, should have to, and a younger generation who are saying, we've lived through COVID, we've had our choices managed for us, we've had our experience of life managed. I'm not putting up with it. Personally, I think they're dead right.
Yeah, the word that actually comes up for me when you're all talking here and about is learning the kids to be adaptable. And that's what we need to be in the job markets, economics and everything right now. And to be adaptable is making a choice and changing when the environment or the situation says that it needs to change. If it's not working for you, find another path.
Maxine, you're dead on.
Adaptability, that's the word I come up with all the time. And the one thing that I was going to say is, when I've got clients in, yeah, you can sit them down and you can get them to get their choice. This is what I really want to do. But the biggest fear that comes in is when they've got to tell family and friends, just for exactly what said. What do you think you're doing? Oh, you'll never do that. You've not got this, you've not got that. What's your family going to say? And it's that fear that comes up. So it's not always just about making the choice and having that adaptability to make the choice. It's what you're going to face when you go out of the treatment room or out your room or out of your head into society and say, this is what I'm going to do. then you're like, everybody's got their own opinion on what your decision or that choice that you've made.
The only thing is that the
Agreed. I
choice
do a lot
to
with students. Because I
Yeah,
do a lot
the-
with students now, and you're both right, exactly what comes up with them. Like the parents send them to me with exam stress. But they don't realise that it's nothing to do with the exams. It's because they're doing topics they don't even like. They're on a subject, they're starting to see the end of it and going, what am I going to do when I leave? Because I don't really want to do that job. And it's because of the peer pressure. And I think we've all got hitting the nail on the head right here is, and I think Maxine mentioned it really earlier, everyone has to start as early as possible in schools. I've been trying to get into schools to do this now. I do it with students and try to get them is, if we give them the skills that they can deal with these choices and changes so they understand that, because I think Mary mentioned it there, it's a generalization thing or generation thing. We still have this thing with without being offensive to anybody, the education kind of system that works is either you're going to go to college, you're going to go to university, you're going to go an apprenticeship, or the nearest thing to that you can get. We never actually let the child themselves to say, what do you really want to do? What can you do? How many creative ones go into these paths because they think they have to, or they're forced, feels like they're forced to do it? Maybe they set their own business up. How many entrepreneurs do we lose out on there, or great creatives who could make something, but they're in a job, you said there, maybe a dead end thing, they think they're stuck because their mindset is totally changed because what parents not want. And I talk to parents and say, oh no, I never do that. I'll let them choose their own. How do you do it? And then when you start talking about it, they go, do you know, I never even realised I've actually been doing that. I was trying to stop that being my parents by forcing them. But then when they tell me things that they like doing, but that's not a job that's going to get right for you. You're not going to end up the right thing for that. But they need to learn that. It's their choice to learn. If that's not the right route, I'll change. It's actually worse in the States than it is here. But I think it's over 65% of children in the States over, I think it was the last 10 or 20 years, have been in from first year to second year at university and either dropped out or changed subject. Because they actually realise when they've got there, they never wanted to go in the first place to do that. It was parents or schools, you're right, guidance, whoever it is. But imagine if we taught them these choices early enough in primary school before they even get into secondary, and they have an open enough mind to say, when they go through that, I'm going to do this now. But yeah, I think what Angela said as well is what they've got to realise is, I'm not going to maybe do that in 2 years' time. Maybe I don't like that. Then I'll choose to do this or I'll choose to do that. But they need to have that ability, the flexibility, the adaptability to be able to say, yeah, I'll start off on this path, but that isn't the path necessarily for the rest of my life. I mentioned something used the other day in a session I didn't use, fork in the road. People talk about their life journey, think it's like 2 straight lines, but it's not. Sometimes you've got to go backwards to go forward. You may have to go sideways. That's life. But these kids need to understand that it's not all one way and that they can choose to divert any direction they want to go. And the earlier we can get them these skills to learn how to deal with that. And the only way we can do that is totally right with Mary, is to stop the education system for thinking we have to put them in these boxes. Stop parents thinking I need to manage their expectations by saying you don't want to push to that side because really you're better at this. But so they take their dreams away, they take their they give them limitations, and we do that as a society. We need to change the whole society there, socio-culturally, and the education system and parents to understand, to give them the ability to be flexible, to be adaptable, malleable to how they're going to go.
I actually have a personal story similar to that, Tony. When I was in high school, I didn't like school. I didn't like high school. Like I had to actually sit in one spot and listen. I'm a creative. That's not really great for me. But I was in the counselor's office and they were trying to decide what I should apply for schools. The counselor's like, well, you need to apply for colleges, because your marks aren't good enough for the universities. I'm like, well, no, I really want to do social sciences. So I want to apply for university. Okay, well, make sure you apply for a college too. Well, I got into university in social science in 2 different schools, actually. I went to university, was way more successful in university because I had more freedom as I was doing my workload, right? You have more freedom to choose whether to go to class or pick up your notes or, when to do your work than you do when you're in high school. And that freedom allowed me the space to do what I needed to do. And I was very successful in university. If I had actually listened to that counselor, I would have just gone to college and been in something I didn't like. So it just brings that personal example to mind, Tony.
Yeah.
What you were
Thank you for that. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
It still happens. It's still happening. It happened with my daughter. Kept telling her she was saying she wanted to do medicine. They kept telling her she could apply for nursing.
Yeah.
And I just said, yeah. And they're two completely different skill sets. So they were
They
never
are.
going to mix. And I just said to her, just tell them that's what you've done and keep them quiet and get them off your case. But it was about saying, you've got a choice. You can fight him or we can stop wasting energy on him. Tell him what he wants to hear because he doesn't actually see the form. She went,
I had one.
I'll tell him what he wants to hear.
I had one work experience girl come in when I was working at the vets, and I was talking to her, and I said, "What do you want to do when you leave school?" And I said, "Which part of the veterinary industry do you want to go in?" Because we wouldn't have anybody who wanted to do anything else. You had to go into the profession. You had to want to go into the profession. Otherwise, you were wasting time in being there, and you're probably a liability. So she said, "Oh, I think I'd like to be a nurse." I said, "Why don't you want to be a vet?" They don't think I can do that. They don't think. Okay, so I told her what happened to me. And I said to her, you try for the vet. If you have to get extra tutoring for extra stuff, then you go ahead and you do it. Shoot for the stars. If you hit the moon, you'll be fine. But shoot for the stars first. Try it. Try it while you still have the time to change your mind, while you still have the time to be doing what you want to do. And our teacher came in, and what she gave me, how dare you tell her that, because she's not good enough to do that. And I looked at her and said, how dare you tell someone who was already told that they're not good enough to do that. You're supposed to be supporting her. You're supposed to be giving her the tools and ways to go forward. You're supposed to be telling her she's free to choose what she wants to try. Not telling her what she can't do because you don't think she can do it.
There's so many stories of people, doing amazing things against all odds. And we're all capable of that, right?
I think it's amazing. My daughter, from the age of 7, 9, decided she wanted to be a policeman. And we watched the bill. I mean, it was religiously every week we did. And she came in at the age of 15, 16, and just decided that she wanted to be in the sciences. And she had picked all her subject, everything. And we went to them and basically said, this is what she's wanting to do. And they said, basically, tough. She's on a track. So I just said to her, right, finish off school, go to college. She had to do another 2 years to get the subjects that she needed to go into the sciences. She went for, can't remember, she went into the first year because she was of uni. I can never remember the name of it. Was told to do this, basically. This is what you're going to do. After the first year, she decided to change course and become a microbiologist. So she has taken different steps along the way. But now I have a daughter who is extremely happy. She's got the job of her dreams. She's happy in every part of her life now. And she's growing. You can see the difference. And when I meet some of her friends, and they're like, oh, I'm doing this because, or I'm just having to do this because of peer pressure from their parents, everything. But it was amazing that my daughter got so much pressure off of her friends as well. What are you doing? Changing, you're going to have to go to college for another 2 years. And as I said to her, so what? If this is what you want to do, go have fun. You've got 2 extra years at college to have fun.
I think that's a really interesting part about choices. That when we make choices, sometimes there's elements in the choice that we will find very tough. And recognizing that we actually just need to ride it out, get through it. My daughter decided she never wants to be a doctor. She has taken one look at the medical students and decided that's not for her and she's not going there. I'm relieved. So I will just add that I am very relieved. However, it is that when we make that choice, we also need to teach the kids, here's the consequence of the choice. Now, how do we get you through it? So like your daughter, Maxine, when she made a choice that meant, yes, I have an extra 2 years in college. Yes, it was different from what her peers were doing. So she had to make more significant choices in terms of social life, engagement with fellow students, all sorts of things. But actually giving them that skill set that, yes, you make the choice and you get to decide, is the cost too much or is it okay? And you're still in charge.
Yeah.
You're still every time making the decision that's right for you at the time.
And the
I think that's the-
satisfaction they feel when they get there is unbelievable because they did it their way.
Yeah.
And that's the bit they can really mold it in. It's great for them.
And the biggest skill set my daughter's got now is adaptability. She adapts
Yeah.
to what life actually, or what she sees in life and decides. She adapts, and she adapts well, I have to say.
The thing is, though, as human beings, that's what we are. We were built to be adaptable.
Yeah.
We have adaptable
Exactly.
brains, we have opposable thumbs. We were built to actually adapt to all different kinds of situations. That's why we live on every continent in the world, just about, apart from Antarctica, because you're like, who wants to live there anyway? But actually, some people do, because the scientists are out there, they're surviving, they're living there.
Mhm.
Lots of penguins and things for neighbours and nice leopard seals occasionally, but wow.
And
they're
for some
still there.
people, like yourself, Leslie, I'm sure that would be your preference as to who your neighbours would be.
Yeah, definitely. A bit smelly on occasions, but then, there are worse things. But at the same time, it's one of those things that when we as human beings, somehow, somewhere along the time of the Industrial Revolution, started to think that we had only one choice. It was a Hobson's choice, no choice at all. We had to go where we were put. We had the expectations of dynasties on our shoulders. And it doesn't matter whether the dynasties had money or whether they were dirt poor. They had levels and nobody went above their level. You stayed on that track, like you said, Tony, parallel lines. And how dare you if you even thought that you could go any further. But thankfully, there are a few mavericks in there, but still went further. And we're living in that time again. We're at a time where the job for life is gone.
Uh-huh.
It's just that the education people have not actually picked up on that yet. And they're still teaching us that we need to pick a career when we're 12 to make the O levels and go on the track and to do that.
There's a good chance by the time they get to the end of the university or whatever else, the job that they decided on at 12 doesn't exist anymore.
Exactly.
Yep.
I also think, I just think that the education system is very antiquated and it's not one fits everybody. There are children out there that just don't fit the school system, don't fit the college system, don't fit the system. And they're the ones that are made to struggle and are made to feel inadequate because they don't fit a box.
Well, that was the whole point of the 11 plus.
Yeah.
The 11 plus, that was actually a divider. That was to take the people, these people who can pass this, they must go to university. These people who can't pass it, they're cannon fodder, they're for the mills.
But every child develops at a different age and everybody develops at different things. We learn things when we're ready, we learn things that we want to grow, we learn when we're interested in them. I don't believe that the system is right for everybody. I appreciate I'm sticking my neck out on the line there. But I'm coming from a parent's perspective where we've had to make massive choices on my daughter's upbringing because of the systems and they didn't work for her. And you have to do what's right for the child and have that freedom, but fight for it as well. And, I think, as you all say, there isn't necessarily a job. She's known what she wants to do since the age of 12, 13, and she's going down that pathway, but she's doing it at her own pace, not through the system. And that way she'll get to where she wants to.
I guess the biggest challenge is that the education system is never going to be right for everybody, but it needs to be built in such a way that it's right for as many people as they can possibly make it for.
I agree.
And that might be the case, but it might not be the case. It might be that the way the system is set up is only suitable for those people who can learn all the facts and figures and regurgitate them on a bit of paper at an exam at time. So thankfully, when I went through school, 11 plus wasn't a thing. So I didn't have to worry about that. But I think it is that point that regardless of how you learn and how you develop, it's not always going to be right for everybody. And they have to choose a system, because I think trying to get lots and lots of different systems, I feel might be more detrimental than what we've got just now. I don't know what the right answer is, and I think there are think tanks out there that are probably being paid thousands and millions of pounds to sort that out. Hopefully one day they'll come up with a solution that makes sense for most.
I think also that the thing is that perhaps there should be more of a choice into which school the child goes to instead of a postcode lottery situation. In that if there are schools that if, like with Trudi's child, if the school is not really suiting, if things are not instead of taking the child out and homeschooling if you have to, I don't know if you do, but if that's the case, there are loads of kids who are homeschooled who are doing wonderful things because they're being schooled in a way that it suits them. However, there's a whole kind of, how dare you even think about doing that? You're not a teacher. How can you do that? How can you teach your child? And yet for years and years and years, and in different places in the world, kids are being taught that way. They're being taught experientially. And they're picking up the 3 R's at the same time because they have to. It's like this crap about taking arts out of schools, not teaching them music or art or drama or anything like that anymore. These things need numbers. They need communication. They need English. They need spelling. They need all of these things to actually work, but they also make the imagination grow. They open it up and allow it to go to the 15th and 18th dimensions and wherever the hell else they want to put themselves. But it's one of those things that.
But I think that brings us back to the choice question again. Yeah. Is that we make choices for, as Angela was saying, that let's see, how many people, if we can fit most at the 80% in, and we'll forget about but we can't forget about the 20% for whom it doesn't work. There has to be other ways and methods that suit. But equally, that piece that we were talking about at the beginning, that you make a choice. You learn that pieces of education around how do you make a choice is not part of our education system. How do you make a decision is not part of the education system in an overt way. Yes, it's implied, but it's not overtly taught. And I think that then we have this challenge is that the education system will work at one pace. People are evolving, and I would say gratefully for the COVID, we actually now have people are challenging ways of doing things in a way that we didn't do before because everything has gone topsy-turvy. So I think we've a lot to be grateful for out of COVID, because it actually threw a whole pile of thinking up in the air. I just say, okay, do you know what? Now we can actually start being more proactive about saying, what are the choices what do we want to teach what skills do we want to teach our kids? And how do we, as adults operating in this brave new world, how do we want to make our choices, and how do we want to evaluate them, and how do we want to have consequences? So I think that choice piece has become a subject for discussion in a way that it wasn't 5 years ago.
It's created a space for everybody to be adaptable. That it's forced people to learn how to be adaptable in a way that we weren't used to doing before. Like even for me, when I was doing Reiki hands-on in person, come COVID, all of a sudden I had to start doing more distance. And so I had to find another way to do things, do distance, do teaching, open to school. You do different things to start to adapt things to where you're at that time. And I think that's one of the benefits that COVID had, was that it really opened up the box for everybody so that they could look out and go, oh, I need to do things differently. How am I going to do that? So it forced everybody to learn how to do that.
It is interesting that when we were coming up to a paradigm shift, and it's something that we all know, it's like, we know what to do. Why don't we do it? And the only time we do it is when we're actually pushed off the ledge and we have to learn to fly, or we go splat on the ground. But even if we go splat on the ground, we're still learning something. You know, you're a different shape perhaps, but you're still going to pick yourself up and do something with yourself, you know? Make a hell of a mess. But still, from messes, I mean, most of our great technological stuff has come from war, surgeries, medicines, different ways of doing things. Even health and safety has come from wars. And it's one of those things that we tend to, what we've got nowadays surgically wise, from the MASH units from the Korean War through to the Vietnam War. But when it really first came about in the First World War, when they started realizing that if you stuck a stake on somebody's eye, the maggots would come and take all the poison out because they'd eat all the rotten flesh. But they're doing it again. They're starting with leeches again. They're starting to use maggots again. And it's one of those things that somebody at one point made a choice and said, maybe we should be going old school. We can treat them in a way that we make them kind of sterile and clean, but we can still use their attributes, their skills, their biological talents. I mean, I don't know if anybody knows this before, but they used to use beetle pincers as staples for wounds in the Bronze Age. You take the heads of beetles and just go like that to put two things together. So they had staples. So, you know, we didn't invent them. We just invented a different kind. We made them metal and actually more sore to take out. God, they hurt. But it's one of those things that they do. They hurt. Especially when you take them out of somebody else that flicks back and gets into you. So it's one of those things that, yeah, I know. I can do it. Don't worry. It's, yeah.
Moving on.
Me and a staple gun, don't go there.
Moving on. Moving on.
It's a choice. It's a choice. Stitches or staples? Take stitches every time.
My choice is that we move on.
So it's one of those things that, though, but when we make choices, sometimes we're not aware that we're making them. It's an impulse. It's a compulsion. It's an idea energetically that we're going the right way because we want to keep things balanced. We want to keep things okay. But actually what we're doing is we're just kind of tucking ourselves away into a corner and we're giving up our freedom. We're choosing to give up freedom. And there are so many of us that do that. And when it comes to children as well, what about asking them, you know, what skills do you want to be taught? Because there's a lot of kids wonder about watching people are doing and they just get, no, go away, we're busy, go away. And yet that kid is interested in learning what you're doing. Fascinated, in fact. And fascination is one of the best learning states that there is.
Yep.
I always think, you know, we talk about school and kids learning, but they learn every minute of the day. They learn, you know, at home, from what you're saying, by them watching people, they what, you know, how the garden. I mean, I used to go out help in the garden, didn't particularly like it, but I'm so glad of it now because I do know what to do with a pot in the soil and how to plant. But, you know, even at those times, you know, I was learning without even realizing I was learning. So it's really about that curiosity. You know, when children show an interest in something and just everyday things, because I don't think even children realize from the minute they get up in the morning, they're making choices all the time. They're making the choice to get out of bed, you know, without their mother screaming at them or pulling them out of bed. They make the choice to brush their teeth. They make, you know, to have breakfast and do everything. So it's letting them know that this is just they're just evolving their skills into, well, you're making all these choices on a daily basis. Are you going to behave? Are you going to sit in class? Are you going to do whatever? Are you going to go and see this friend? What are you going to do at the weekend? So it's like taking and saying to them, you know, you make choices all the time. And you've always got good or bad consequences. You've got both. A lot of people talk about consequences as being bad, but you've always got the good consequences. So to me, if you're going back to basics, you know, especially with children, because this is where the change is going to take place, and just say to them, look, let's just evolve. Let's just take this and just learn a bit more and be more aware of the choices that you are making, so that when you've got choices that's coming up for what you want to do in education or whatever, you can then start looking what's the consequences, good and bad, and look at them, and then you get that balance of whether it's right for you. And not only are they getting the balance of seeing it on paper, they're getting the chance to look at it and feel how it feels. And we're coming back to that energy of what feels right within them to make that choice. So, you know, there's so many, we talk about choosing, but there's so many skill sets even in making that choice. It's like, how do you do it? How does it feel? Does it feel right? Is it going to bring balance? And even how that's going to impact on other people. I mean, it's okay to say that our kids want to go and do something and go to university for years, but maybe that's not possible with parents unless without parental support. And then it's down to, have they got parental support? So it's looking at everything, and then it's saying, right, okay, maybe we can't do all of this, but how can we make that work? So you're actually taking these skills and you're layering the skills. You've got the adaptability. You're looking to see all the different skill sets coming together. And when a child grows up and has that skill set, they're set for life.
Mm-hmm. So it's about teaching kids the softer skills,
Yeah,
the decision making and all of that.
And
I think you mentioned that, Leslie.
Building up on those skills. What is a choice? How, you know, how's it going to be? What's the consequences, good and bad? You know, it's not just the bad. What are you going to get out of this? And looking and just building and building as they grow. Obviously, you're not going to do that to a 2-year-old, you know, but you will start when they grow older. You know, what, you know, is that going to be good? Is it going to be bad? It's just asking the questions. And that's all it does for children to start to become aware of what actually a choice is. And
I'm kind of interested, Maxine, sorry to interrupt you, but I'm kind of interested in this good and bad situation, this black and white thing. Because what if we just say there are consequences? Because it depends on how they actually look at them as to whether they are going to be seen as good or bad themselves. Because it might well be, to differentiate one consequential thing from another. However,
or even the word outcome. Because it doesn't have that connotation.
But outcome then is a better word. But remember, when I say good and bad, you've got everything in between as well.
Yeah. I'm just actually interested in the way that a child would hear that. Right. Because they do go very black and very white, and it's a case of it's either this or it's that.
On board. And outcomes, you know, is yet again, we're all going to use our own words. And yet again, it's about, even when you find yourself using a word, it's about taking that on board. And I'll take that on board, Leslie, because I've not actually thought about that. But when I tend to say consequences, and always have, I'll just say, and everything in between. You've got a balanced side and you've got the two sides. So outcomes is a good word.
And I think too that, you know, when we talk about small children, they tend to be more concrete and literal. And then and if they've learned to do it from the literal sense, can I play with this toy or that toy? When they develop abstract reasoning as teenagers, then is the time, oh yeah, there's lots of shades of grey in between as well, by the way. It's not just black and white.
Yeah.
So, but they're, small kids aren't going to be, their capacity for grey is not really there as small kids, but as they grow up and as they hit the teenagers, they're learning about grey, for want of a better word to describe, and all that realm in between of what it might be and what could happen and what might happen, and it's more abstract, and that's just part of growing up. But engaging with them and making sure that they actually think through, even if the argument to our way of thinking as fully fledged adults is there is no logic here, but giving them space to try and tease out their own logic and see where it takes them is a learning process that has huge value.
See, I love this because even through this, to me, every day is a school day. I've just actually picked up a word that I've used, or a few words that I've used that, and thinking about it, I get everything that's said. So it's a school day for me today. And this is what I love about when you're in a group and you're speaking, because it's like, oh my God, I've just used that word and yet when talking about it, I've got a different thought of what the two words mean. But when you're talking about it to a child, I take on board. So it's a school day for me. So I'm going to say thank you and go away and go, oh my God, what have I done to my child?
You see, there you go. Please choose to not do that.
Yes.
Choose to not do that. It's not a case of, I love to play with words and I love to challenge on occasions how, and it sometimes in this group, things trigger me from when I was a kid. And the kind of things that were said to me about, well, that's bad and you've done that and it's bad, so you're going to get something bad for it.
Yeah,
kind of thing,
Leslie, that is coming up because what I've realised, that was exactly the words that was used when I was growing up. So I have just taken them, and I've never realised it before that I've taken on. It's just that generational. It was always good or bad or bits in the middle. And in fact, I never got bits in the middle. It was always good or bad. So I evolved it with the grey bits in between. So now I'll evolve it even further.
Oh yeah, I mean, let's face it, in our day, it was a case of kids were seen and not heard. Sit down, shut up, and be still. Be invisible. The adults are talking. And it's one of those things that, we didn't have a freedom of choice in that department because we had to do what we were told. However, when it comes to being free to choose, like Maxine said, we are choosing words that are perhaps chosen for us. And we have to kind of roll back the radar and say, how do I feel about that word? How does that word actually hit me? Did someone else say something that actually I don't really understand how they got to that point with that word? Why did that trigger them? How did they choose to be triggered by that? And there are choices, there are decisions, and there are just knee-jerk reactions that are sometimes good, sometimes not so happy in their outcome. However, when we think about freedom, we think about just, being able to do anything that we want to, when we want to, how we want to. It's that kind of lotus eating idea of everything's just going to be fine, which was going around a lot in the 60s with a lot of long cigarettes and things in them. However, everything was fine when you were doing that. You know what I'm talking about, Angela Daye. Don't even start.
I wasn't around in the 60s, sorry.
You don't need to be around the 60s.
She had to get in every episode, didn't she? She has
to get it in. It's
like my choice.
She chooses to do that, and I choose to set it up for her.
Yeah. But it was her choice when to do it tonight, wasn't it, Angela? Yes.
Yeah.
So I would love the choice before we finish. I would love for whoever listens to this to choose to continue these conversations. I would love parents, teachers, powers that be, whoever listens to us talk with us, to choose to say, wait a minute, maybe there is something in this there. Maybe we have to listen to the children. Maybe we have to adapt our own curriculum. Maybe we have to adapt the system. Maybe what we just have to do is actually be a bit more open and how we do things. Maybe talk to people like yourselves who actually have lived through these things, can look at that from a different perspective, maybe from them, but just keep these conversations going. Because we might not help out the children now, but surely can help the generations to come. That they don't have it, they have that choice, so have that.
Can I add one phrase? It's one I use with a lot of my interview candidates I work with. What you say and what they hear may not be the same thing.
Yeah.
And we need to be very careful how it lands. How is what we're saying landing with them? And what are we teaching them and how it lands?
So I'm going to continue this conversation off piste because we're due to wrap up now. Yeah. I'm choosing to ignore that. Now,
You have that freedom.
yes, I have that freedom of choice. I'm free. I'm totally free. Nobody puts the price on me. So I'm priceless. So thank you, everyone. Yeah, there you go. Face plant. Thank you, everyone. It was a great conversation, and I'm sure we're going to come up with another absolute corker for next month.